John, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Kaylee, Anthony. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, John. Thanks so much. So, John, real quick, you have a story out right now. You are a Washington correspondent. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you have going on?
Yeah, it was. I was doing a little bit of research. Some background. Congress has been brought back the ability of lawmakers to use federal funds towards their pet projects in their districts. After Republicans had led this push back in 2010 to eliminate them, they're called earmarks, and these were what had been considered like pork barrel. They call them pork barrel projects. Like there was one that was infamous was called the Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska. So, but the argument to bring them back was supported by both Democrats and Republicans. And so there was you could have legitimate infrastructure projects in your districts that are actually really important. So I was looking through the spreadsheet, and there were several freight projects there, but there was one that kind of stood out a bit. It was and these have to be approved for funding, but this lawmaker in Alabama named Terry Sewell wants to put in a request for $2 million to buy a parcel of land in Montgomery, Alabama, to be used for an intermodal transfer facility. So the money would sort of be this land would be the linchpin for a partnership between the Port of Mobile, APM Terminals, which is a major container operator, and CSX, which operates a rail line that runs adjacent to the property that they want to develop. So the basic concept is to extend the reach of the port by putting containers on rail and moving them inland. And this would be like roughly 180, 200 miles, which currently is it's a pretty substantial truck drayage move, which is how these containers move now. Driving the need from a shipper standpoint, what's driving the need for this project, if it were to get funded, Hyundai has an auto assembly plant in Montgomery. So the thought is that they would be the customer that would kind of provide the critical mass to get this inland port viable. The container business in the Port of Mobile isn't, it's not nearly the size of LA or New York, but it's growing pretty fast. In fact, they say that they're like the fastest growing container terminal in the country. So the port sees this facility as like an inland extension of the port for imports and exports into the Southeast. So you're basically shifting the drayage operations to where you can now reach from the port so you can now reach cities, even, not just in Montgomery, but north of there. So you could go as far as like Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, and even as far as Chattanooga, which is I think about a little over 230 miles from Montgomery. So that's kind of like the basics of that project.
And so, John, when you talk about the port growth of the Port of Mobile, how much of that growth, I don't know if you can speak on this, is kind of coming from the pressure that we're seeing on that other big Gulf port, Port of Houston, and that port kind of taking on a lot of the container crisis moving away from the West Coast, and on the other side, that port congestion in Savannah as well? Are people thinking, hey, we're seeing struggles both on the east and the west of this Port of Mobile, let's move it into that kind of middle Gulf Coast area?
Yeah. A lot of it, Kaylee, is due to that. I mean, like all the ports, Mobile is pretty congested, and this inland port concept is, like you mentioned, the Southeast ports, but it's kind of been being done at Port of Virginia. They've got what's called the Virginia Inland Port. They call it the VIP port. It's like 200 miles away from the port at Hampton Roads. So they've got that going on. They've got one in Richmond. Port of Charleston has one in an inland port, an intermodal transfer facility in Greer, and one in Dillon, South Carolina. They're located on NS and CSX rail lines. and then also Port of Savannah has a couple too, and they actually Port of Savannah actually just announced that they're getting money funding from the Department of Commerce to jumpstart another one in northeast Georgia. So it's the container business, for either West Coast or East Coast. Mobile is benefiting from all this, all not just kind of the congestion there, but just a general increase in container imports that's been going on for the past year.
So, John, there's another area that you mentioned briefly, and it's been one that I've been kind of watching closely. Some of my friends may think I'm a nerd for watching it so closely, but it's impactful, and it's the infrastructure bill. Do you have any updates around that?
Yeah. So this, just looking specifically at the surface bill, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee approved a reauthorization of the highway bill. So the current one expires in September. So they're trying to get something done on this. Otherwise, they'll have to do another short-term extension like they did last year. So the bill was approved. It now moves on to the full House for a vote in a few weeks. But like last year's bill, which never made it past the House, it has a bunch of stuff the trucking industry it wasn't too happy about, especially owner-operator types. And the biggest one being increasing the trucking insurance liability from $750,000 to $2 million. A lawmaker, Mike Bost, a Republican from Illinois, put in an amendment while they were marking up the bill last week to try to eliminate that, but the Democrats voted that down. And then there were other provisions that passed despite attempts to take them out that the trucking industry isn't too fond of. Owner operators in particular requiring automatic emergency braking in new trucks, requiring side underride guards in new trucks, and restrictions on using your truck for personal use while off duty. Those were all attempts to take those out were all defeated. So in other words, they're still in there. But there was a good thing in the bill that even the large carriers as well as the smaller ones wanted to get in there, which did remain, was a truck parking provision, which basically would set aside $1 billion over five years to fund expand truck parking infrastructure around the country. So that's something that they did want to get in there. But so like I said, it's expected to pass the House, but like last year, it's unlikely that the Senate is going to advance it. At least that's the expectations.
And so, John, when it comes to infrastructure developments, there have been a lot of calls from people talking to the government of, hey, when are you guys going to step in and kind of handle the situation that's going on in the ports? Is there anything contained in that infrastructure bill that that is kind of a shot at taking care of the port situation from a federal standpoint instead of just trying to let it untangle itself?
Not specifically in the bill. At least I don't think so. I think that's sort of there are separate efforts that are going on that. The surface bill didn't have anything specific, but there is a call from shippers to get that done separately. So they're looking at even trying to change the Shipping Act and the Federal Maritime that the Federal Maritime Commission oversees to make some of those changes. So it could get included, but we'll see. We'll see how that moves. I think at this point, they know what's going to be going into the bill.
So, John, you kind of mentioned that this was in place last year and kind of got shot down. Shot in the dark here on your end, what is the likelihood, do you think, that this actually comes to fruition and that there is actually some type of agreement reached and we see some type of action moving forward? Or on the other hand, what are the chances on your side that you see that this actually gets shot down again?
I think it's looking like there might be, as far as the surface transportation bill, which was kind of a smaller part of Biden's big infrastructure package. I've heard both outlooks on that they'll try to get something done small on that. But then I heard that's going to be set aside. As far as Biden's big infrastructure package, it's certainly, if it gets passed, it's certainly not going to be this $2.3 trillion bill that he initially wanted to do. The problem is you got like the progressive wing of the Democratic Party that's been scuffling with the moderates. The progressives want to toe the line and try to get all the bells and whistles of this infrastructure bill that goes beyond what's known as traditional infrastructure, like climate change and electric vehicles. They're pushing to keep that, but the moderates are saying, well, the Republicans want something scaled down, but something is better than nothing, basically. So it might end up looking more like a traditional infrastructure package if it gets passed with the non-traditional, what's considered non-traditional infrastructure, in other separate bills that might come at another time.
Awesome, John. Well, thank you for joining us this morning on FreightWaves Now. We'll be sure to have you back as soon as we get any type of movement on this bill, kind of to talk about its progress.